Today we're going to be looking at the Odin 2 Portal, and this thing is surprisingly similar to a lot of the Retroid devices and is an incredible Android handheld. So with that all being said, let's take a look at this device and see why it might be not made just by Ein.
Remember, at the end of every month, we give away one of these handhelds because they are filling my basement and I don't know what to do with them. If you'd like to be considered to win, subscribe down below, and it doesn't hurt to leave a comment or like the video. I can see who does that, and active members in the community I'd like to support. Now on to the Portal.
So this is the Odin 2 Portal, and these are the Retroid Pocket 5 and Mini, and all of this hardware looks very, very similar, and a lot of the design cues are, well, they're basically the same. So what does Retroid and Ein have in common that needs to be addressed on this review? Well, let's take a look at the hardware of the Odin 2 Portal first, and then we'll get into the comparisons later.
So then this is what we have for the hardware of the Odin 2 Portal. This thing is made of hard ABS plastic, and then one large piece of glass that covers the entire front face of this device. This makes it feel really good, but have an absolute slew of smudging. And what else looks fantastic is its 7-inch 1080p 120Hz OLED screen, coming in at 800 nits, making it just bright enough for outside in shade but not direct sunlight. We have two joysticks that have removable top caps and replaceable top caps right from inside the box that have clicks, and a ring around the base that you're able to change the color of. A D-pad that is clicky and has quite a thump to it, but feels great. Home and back buttons that are very clicky and live in these little pods down where the speaker grills are, and they are grills so no crud gets in them. In addition, we have an Xbox style layout with an A, B, X, Y buttons that are squishy and not clicky, and also replaceable for the Switch style buttons right inside the box, which is a nice addition. And then we have our start and select buttons that are very micro switchy and clicky. And that's all we have on the front. Make sure not to drop this thing. There's glass everywhere. Looking down on the bottom of the device, we have a micro SD card slot, headphone jack, and USB-C port. On the left and right side of the device, we have nothing. But on the top of the device, we have R1, R2, L1, and L2. L1 and R1 are definitely squishy, but have a little pop when you release them. And L2 and R2 are Hall effect triggers that just have resistance, no click or squish. Running along the top, we have a volume rocker that is clicky, an LED indicator light, and a power on-off button that is clicky, and an exhaust port for the fan on the back. And while we're on the back, we have two very clicky back buttons, along with a relatively familiar back grill for the intake on the fan here. I don't know where you're getting that. And the Ein logo. This thing feels awesome when you grip it and reminds me of the fit and finish of something like the Logitech Cloud. You can tell they know what they're doing when it comes to hardware.
So for the hardware, I think Ein has done an absolutely fantastic job putting this Android handheld together. The sparkling screen is absolutely delicious. It has 120 Hz refresh rate, and this thing can actually get it up to there. So why don't we talk about the software then and see why this device is just so flashy.
With all the flashy bits aside, this 1080p OLED screen at 120 Hz absolutely delivers. On this handheld console, we have Android-based operating system, which means you have access to all of the different Android apps on here, which means you can get a lot of gaming done. But starting at the bottom, Ein has two things that they've developed for this handheld that is specific to them. Their front-end launcher, which I'm not really a fan of, I prefer just regular Android, and their key mapping software, in addition to a few overlays on the Android base operating system for the lights and the power. I think they've done a really sharp job of putting everything together nicely. This brings us to what type of gaming can this Android handheld provide, and we're going to start off with emulation first. Everything from your 8-bit style consoles all the way up to 3D Land is going to run perfectly on here. Everything that is able to be emulated through RetroArch will run perfectly fine on this device. I still hate how RetroArch works with their foldering system and how un-user-friendly the menus are, but it does work when you set this up correctly. In addition to that, we have app-based emulation, where RetroArch covers basically up to the PS1 and N64. The next things up are the Nintendo DS, the PSP, and the Dolphin emulator for GameCube and Wii. This thing has packed with a great processor and RAM and plenty of storage, so we're not lacking in the power department. PSP on the emulator runs fantastic. GameCube and Wii run exactly how you would expect them to. Widescreen hacks enabled, it works really well. Moving up to consoles like the Nintendo DS, Nintendo 3DS, and the Switch, I'm not really going to go over. This thing has plenty of power and can emulate all of them, but Nintendo's been on a tirade recently, and I'm not going to tempt the ninjas. But just know, it all works really well in this device, especially with the button overlays for some of the more finicky emulators. Now moving up to PS2, which is a little harder to emulate, but a little bit farther back in the overarching timeline. The PS2 emulators run fantastic, and I'm using Aether SX2 on here, and it's got plenty of power. This then brings us up to, the PS3, Xbox 360 era of things, which a lot of those games are starting to get ported over to streaming services. So why don't we just go directly to there? Because I don't think emulating these games are even worth it anymore, because finding the games that are gigantic or dumping your own library and having it on an SD card is going to take up a ton of space. So why don't you just stream it? Because this game console is fantastic for streaming. An Xbox Game Pass, Nvidia Cloud Gaming, GeForce Now, and even the PlayStation versions all do fantastic on this device. PlayStation sometimes has some issues with the controls not being detected for the inboard controllers here, so you can actually turn them off and remap those buttons if you want to with Ein software, and it works pretty well, but sometimes it's left on the screen, so you got to deal with looking at it. But I ended up liking GeForce Now the most on here, specifically because Monster Hunter's out and it won't play on my computer at the full res, so throwing it over to Nvidia's servers to do the heavy lifting for me was kind of my idea, and see how much we can abuse them to play this game at a higher fidelity, which I dug into the menus, and they're only streaming at 720p anyway. So it is what it is. That's Nvidia's problem, not the Portal's problem. This thing is awesome, and I think that Ein put together a fantastic software package for this equally awesome hardware.
I really can't say enough good things about this product. The fit and finish of the device's hardware, in addition to how well the software is just put together on this thing, works really well. The Ein launcher doesn't get in your way if you don't want to use it, and you have the Android store, so you can just download whatever front-end launcher you want if you're playing this for retro gaming. If you're not, this thing is also a phenomenal streaming handheld. Being able to play PlayStation, Xbox, or Nvidia Cloud Gaming it works like that on this thing. It's got dual band Wi-Fi, and it has had stellar pickup, and also just everything was great. I really liked the package that they put together on this thing. But this also comes together and begs the question, why is Ein so similar to Retroid in this aspect? Because I think Retroid's done a really good job of making Android handhelds and all of these little Android OLED handhelds. So let's move into the comparison portion and see why More Chip Technologies is a company that we may need to know about.
So looking at the comparison section for this video, we have the Ein Odin Portal 2, the Retroid Pocket 5, and the Retroid Pocket Mini. All three of these devices have AMOLED screens, Hall effect joysticks and triggers, and the design cues are so close that it looks like they're all made from one manufacturer. And the reason for this is because Ein and Retroid are both owned by a company called More Chip Technologies. So the cross-reference of people who are actually working on developing these devices is pretty likely. Now they do operate independently, Ein and Retroid, but it looks like for these, they wanted to make a 1, 2, 3 handheld selection pretty much nobody's gonna beat. If you're looking for an Android handheld in one of these sizes, these are some of the best devices to do it on. The Mini if you want small, the Retroid Pocket 5 for everybody who wants a D-pad first experience, and if you're looking for streaming or first-party titles to be played on a device and streaming later on, the Ein Odin 2 Portal is where I'd look.
Now, I personally think that the Retroid lineups were going in the correct direction when they had the translucent shells and were looking for very much a more retro feel. But I also understand why Ein made the decisions they made with this larger screen. So it looks like Ein's handling the larger projects, while Retroid's handling pretty much their own projects, going over the Mini, in the Retroid Pocket lineup 1 through 5 so far. The competition is stiff in this area, and Android gaming is just absolutely exploding with handhelds every day now. So if you're looking for an Android handheld and you want one in any one of these sizes, this is the hardware and software packages that you need to get yourself going. I really like what More Chip Technologies has done with both of their departments here, and I think it's fantastic. If you're interested, all the links are down below. And if you are looking for full reviews on the other Retroid product, we've done those too. So check those out. They'll be in the description. But I do have to ponder, is Android gaming getting this big? And is it worthwhile investing your time into these mobile platforms versus something like an Xbox? So, leave it in the comment section down below if you think the Android store is worth investing in, or if you're just picking one of these up to do some cloud gaming on the go. I know I will be definitely using this thing for cloud gaming, and it's tough because the Odin Mini, I can't remember, the one that looks like a PS Vita, that one might not get a lot of play right now because the ones that just came out are absolutely spectacular. So, that's all I have for you today. Remember to subscribe to have a chance to win the handheld giveaway. We do one every month, so come along for the journey. I'll talk to you guys later.